All right, so we'll just get started. So wow, there's so many people here. Thank you all for coming. My name is Diana, and I'm with the Asian Pacific Islander Cultural Center, also known as APIC, and we are very proud to co-present Love Letters to Chinatown today. Before we get started, I just want to open the space with some quick statements of gratitude. Shout out to some of my fellow APIC staff members, Melanie and Vinay, who are present with us today. We also want to acknowledge the unceded Ohlone land we are tuning in from. And as a cultural organization, we want to express our solidarity with the movement for Black lives and the ongoing fight for racial justice and equity. If you are up to it, feel free to introduce yourself and share where you're coming in from in the chat right now. And we also want to acknowledge the privilege for being able to host this event online, for us to gather virtually on a Sunday afternoon. We recognize that very real comments and thoughts are replicated and often intensified over the internet, and we want to ensure we have a safe, positive, and respectful event. So if there happens to be any disruptive comments, gestures, or language from anyone during the call, we do have the option to remove you from the Zoom. Hopefully we can give you a warning, but if the situation calls for it, we can do that. A few housekeeping items to be aware of. The automatic live captions are available if you need to access it at the bottom of your Zoom window. And you can click the little caret next to the caption button and select show captions to view them. This event is also being recorded and will be uploaded to APIC's YouTube and made available on our social media. We also ask that everyone mute their microphones out of respect for today's speakers so that everyone in the audience can hear them loud and clear. And if you have any questions, there will also be a moment for a Q&A and a chance to share your thoughts as well. And just a few announcements before we get started. Next week, Saturday at 2 p.m., APIC is hosting another program called Tito Ramon's Incredibly Silly Puppet Show, which is open to all ages. Whether you're 5 or 105 years old, we hope you'll join us for a special performance by Filipino-American puppeteer Tito Ramon, featuring music by Kuya Joshua and some silly puppet stories written and performed by silly kids themselves. So that's happening next weekend. And APIC is also proud to announce that we just opened our call for entries for our 24th annual United States of Asian America Festival. We know with this year's circumstances, we're having all our events online. So we do have new award levels, so make sure to check that out. For this year's festival, we're considering proposals for virtual events and outdoor art events occurring in May under the theme of Forging Our Futures, Soma, and Chinatown. And you can learn all about what I just said and all of our programs on our website at apiculturalcenter.org. So without further ado, it's my privilege to pass the virtual mic off to a very good friend of mine and the very first host for today's program, Vida Kwong.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. And we're just very honored that you're opening up your Sunday to listen from our amazing group of speakers. So my name is Vida Kong. I use she, her pronouns. Chinatown has always been my home and community. And I'm very lucky to be a community-based artist who has deep roots in Chinatown. So I'm going to pass it on to the team of folks who helped organize this event along with me. Pass it to Carmen.
Thank you, Vida. Hi, everyone. My name is Carmen Chen. I use she, her pronouns. Similar to Vida, I have deep roots in Chinatown. I grew up in Chinatown. I am currently double majoring in psychology and sociology. So very happy to be here with everyone. Hope y'all will enjoy it. And I pass it to Leanne.
Hi, my name is Leanne Chen, she, her pronouns, and I grew up in Chinatown, live in Long Beach now, but I still love Chinatown and our people, so thank you for letting me help today.
All right. Cool.
Leanne, I think you're on mute.
Oh, did you hear any of that?
Yes, we did.
Sorry,
Thanks,
Leanne, we can't really
for-
hear your audio right now.
Oh. I heard Leanne.
Thanks, y'all. So Leanne will be helping us with tech. So if any folks are running into issues, please direct message Leanne. If not, Vida and I and Diana will be here to help. But we'll start off with giving a little bit of a background or overview about Love Letters to Chinatown. Love Letters to Chinatown was started by our friends Mei Lam and Huiying Bi Chan from the W.O.W Project over in New York. It was created at the very, very beginning of the pandemic when everyone was very devastated with the closure of many small businesses. So they posted it up on social media, and after seeing that post, I immediately texted Vida and said, why can't we do something here? So that's actually how it all started. Nothing very glamorous. Vida and I hop on a call and said, let's bring this here to the Bay Area. So we started thinking and planning of how we can grow this project here. We got in touch with May a couple weeks later and basically talked through how our process was like and how we can replicate that here. I think a challenge that Vida and I did have during the beginning of this project is that both of us aren't affiliated, or this project here in the Bay Area is not affiliated with the organization or group. So finding fundings and resources came at our own time. So that basically was most of what was happening for the first couple of months. But since the inception of this Bay Area edition back in May, we have received an immense amount of love from the community. We have received letters from children's, youth, adults sharing words of encouragement and support to a community they hold close. We have also partnered up with Chinatown Community Development Center for their 43rd virtual anniversary celebration last month. And since this is Love Letters to Chinatown, Vida and I will be saying the word love a lot because, love is almost non-existent, or saying love is almost non-existent in the Asian communities. We really rarely sit with what this word really means. So get uncomfortable with the comfortable folks. All right, without holding it up any further, I like to ask Vida to lead us in a land acknowledgement.
Thank you all. And I apologize for the audio earlier. So I want to start off with saying that as we recognize this current moment in Chinatown history is important, we also want to acknowledge that the land we are honoring and loving on today at San Francisco Chinatown is the traditional territory of the Yelamu local tribe of Ramaytush Ohlone people. So Ohlone families have lived on this land and we call home long before California was Spain, Mexico, or the United States, and way before our ancestors settled on Ramaytush land as laborers or sought refuge from war or economic oppression, or simply to look for better opportunities for themselves and their future generation. So today, as we begin to dialogue on how our actions in this pandemic will impact Chinatown's next generation, we as guests on this land recognize and want to be accountable to the fact that we benefit from living and working on traditional indigenous land, and that our communities are connected in deeper ways than we can imagine. We wish to pay our respects by acknowledging the ancestors, elders, youth, and relatives of the Ohlone community by affirming their sovereign rights as First People. So I want to recognize and acknowledge that we've also been going through a really rough year. So we really thank you all for attending, whether you came because you call Chinatown your home or Chinatown holds a special place in your heart. We welcome you. And we welcome our guest speakers today whose art, words, and actions uplift Chinatown during its darkest moments. So as we invite each speaker to share, we want to encourage you all to send words of affirmation or quotes that you found powerful or enlightening in the chat. There's also the heart emoji in the reactions button below. You can also share that. So as the program goes on, there will be many more opportunities for us to interact with one another, and we'll have our speakers first share their art and mutual aid efforts. And then afterwards, we will open up the floor to Q&A and create an opportunity for all of us to create a collective love letter to Chinatown. So now with that being said, I'll pass the mic on to Carmen.
Thank you, Vida. Thank you for guiding us in this space. We're so excited and again, super, super grateful to have an amazing lineup of speakers and artists joining us today. Some of their work you may have already seen, others you will be probably hearing for the first time, but all reminds us of how deep our roots run in Chinatown. To start off, I have the amazing honor of introducing Kimberly Au, the amazing artist who drew the black and white bok choy you probably have been seeing across all Love Letters to Chinatown platforms. And also for folks who don't know, Kim was like the first one to submit a love letter after Vida and I basically push out a call for the Bay Area. A little bit about Kimberly. They are born and raised in San Francisco, California. I'm sorry, Chinatown. They were raised and currently live in Chinatown since they were 6. They are currently an environmental horticulture and urban forestry student at UC Davis. Their passion for horticulture stems from volunteering at parks, spending time at community gardens, and watching their plants grow. They hope to be a good steward of the land they live on, whether it be through drawing or habitat restoration. So give some loves, heart, stars to Kim as they share a little bit more about their artwork and love letter to Chinatown. It's all yours, Kim.
Hi, I'm Kimberly. So I'm going to be sharing a little bit about this piece I did. It's of a little bok choy propagule. I first drew this when I went to Davis, and this was in the summer in the pandemic. And I had gone back to Davis, and with going back, I brought groceries that my parents had bought me so I could have some culturally important food in Davis, where there aren't many Asian markets there. And then I had an idea that I should try to propagate these and grow my own bok choy. And so after preparing them for cooking, I left the centers and submerged the bottoms of the bok choy in water to try to propagate them. And it brought me a lot of joy to see them grow little roots. And I drew this bok choy to capture kind of a moment of growth within watching them grow and change. And 6 of the propagules survived, and I potted them. And since Davis has a really hot summer, they quickly went to flower and to seed, and I saved some of the seeds later on in the summer. And I was thinking about resilience and growth a lot when I was drawing this bok choy prop. Kind of like the bok choy, I was taking a little piece of Chinatown and my love for Chinatown through my connection with food, and I brought it to Davis, where I was at for school. And it made me really touched that I could bring a little piece of Chinatown and really emphasize Chinatown is one of my homes and communities. And I bring up resilience in that even though it was really hot in the Davis summer and these bok choy little props were only submerged in water, a lot of them grew out roots, pushed out their leaves and even went to flowering. And in a similar way, I hope that as a community, we're able to continue to safely share food and maybe even start sharing seeds and have little seeds of hope and growth for everyone in the community as well. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Kim. Thanks for touching on how food is particularly a strong love language for children of immigrants, because many do not know how to say I love you. Food is affection. Food is a means of closing and reconciling the many cultural gaps between generations. We speak this language whether we know it or not, to our ancestors to comfort our identities. We speak in recipe that reminds us of home. So thank you, Kim. Next, I'd love to introduce Erin Ryden, who will be live reading a love letter she wrote to Chinatown. Erin is currently a student at UC Berkeley. She grew up listening to her grandma's stories of growing up in Manchuria, being spoiled with homemade dumplings whenever going to Chinese school on Saturdays, as I'm sure many of us have. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Erin to share and to speak about their connection to Chinatown.
Yeah, so hello everyone. Unlike many of the other artists and speakers here today, I didn't grow up in Chinatown, so my perspective is more of one from outside looking in, and really appreciating this cultural hub that we're so thankful to have here in America. So this is a story of someone I met in Chinatown last year around Lunar New Year, so please enjoy. To Cece, the little girl who lives in the souvenir shop. It was Chinese New Year when we met, and I was celebrating in the city. My friends were off looking at parasols and lucky cats and Ida padded jackets. They reminded me of my grandma at home. I missed her dearly. If I was there, I would have been making dumplings with her together. You know when you can feel eyes watching you? It's a strange feeling. You don't notice it until you look into the eyes of whoever is staring at you. When I looked up, the eyes I saw were yours. I saw your bright eyes hiding behind a thick pile of neatly folded clothes. You ran to hide, and I laughed. When you peeked out again from behind a stand of magnets, I was ready with a smile and a wave. Run, hide, repeat. But then suddenly you didn't run and hide anymore. Before we knew it, we were talking. You said your name was Cece, mine was Erin. Cece, Vietnamese. Cece in second grade and loves to read. Cece wearing double braids and playing hide and seek with strangers. This is all I know about you. This is everything I learned from our brief encounter. I often wonder, are you lonely? What are your dreams? Why did it seem like there was a whole story waiting at the tip of your tongue, waiting to be sprung? Cece, I hope you're well. I hope you're full of hopes and dreams. I hope you have someone to tell stories, and I hope we meet again. So thank you for finding me that day, Cece. Love, Erin. So yeah, that's it. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Erin. Thank you for sharing your love letter to Chinatown and your letter to Cece. Next, I have the honor of introducing James Q. Chan, who is an Emmy-nominated director and producer based in San Francisco. Recent credits include producing Harry and Josh Chuck's Chinatown Rising, directing large format 360 films for Disney. His first love letter to the community was Forever Chinatown, and his new documentary series Chinatown Shorts, which we'll be able to see in a couple minutes, is a continuation of that. James received a certificate of honor from the SF Board of Supervisors for his work, highlighting stories from the APA community. He is currently adapting Lawrence Yip's acclaimed Child of the Owl Black into a feature film. He is also a member of the Directors Guild of America. Whew, that is probably the closest I'll get to my Emmys award fame. And so for the next portion, James, I'd like to invite you to share a little more about your Chinatown shorts and how you think it's relevant to the pandemic.
Thank you, Carmen. And thank you, Erin and Kimberly for amazing stories, and also that print. I think sheltered in place, we saw a lot of people grow their own onions, bake bread. So it was really cool. The specificity of growing bok choy is awesome. So Chinatown Shorts. Chinatown Shorts is a new web series that was seeded around 2018 It was a response to, well, it kind of picks up where Forever Chinatown ended, which was portraits of the community. And I wanted to make sure that it was clear that when it comes to Chinatown, there's multiple entry points to the community. And every single person has a very specific entry point. And so in 2018, it started as like a preservation project, something to create short documentaries and make it accessible for free online. Then I got busy with a little project and kind of put it aside. And the pandemic came along, and it was a perfect time to use that as a response to the anti-Asian and anti-Chinese sentiments that was rising up. And so kind of put a little team together and curated some shorts and finished some shorts. And one of those is a film that I want to share with you. And it is on a very special human being, Aaron Lim. And I think it was, for me, one of these short stories with Aaron and his family and his friends meeting the moment and being able to respond to the need of community. And it was shot and finished during the height of shelter in place. And it's co-presented by Chinatown Community Development Center. And the short is directed by Anson Ho. And I am going to share the screen right now, and we will just roll right into it.
Hey, Caroline.
What's up?
So we're running a little behind. We had a couple little hiccups, but we have a car full of like layers deep of Chinese food right now.
Ooh,
But
cool. Should I tell the first group maybe around like 6:15?
yeah, how about 6:15?
But then I'll update them. Like I think that's closer.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
A big part of our coverage through this crisis is featuring something good. The old phrase, it takes a village, but sometimes it just takes one person. How one man is delivering relief in Chinatown.
At the height of shelter in place, I walked around a couple times, just like at night, like at 8 o'clock, when restaurants should still be open and no one on the streets. I would go to some of the restaurants that I frequent all the time, and usually when I go there, I talk to the owners for a while, and they were telling me about how much business was down, especially for the ones that didn't have like Uber Eats or the different delivery systems. I would send a message to 5 to 10 friends and just let them know, hey, I'm gonna go to New Fortune this weekend. Here's the menu, let me know what you want, I'll drop it off. While I had been doing the food delivery for family and friends, I saw the Chinatown Community Development Center's Feed and Fuel fundraiser. CCDC's mission has been to support Chinatown with the housing, but during the pandemic, they pivoted to helping the community in other ways by providing meals for the community and also supporting the restaurants. I saw that you can create your own fundraiser. And that was when I chose my $1,000 goal. And the reason why I particularly liked this fundraiser was because it helped the whole community. These are the 4 different drivers, cassettes that are leaving, okay? Mm-hmm. Andrew is going to drop off to Daly City, and then he's going to go back to his home in San Francisco. And then here's me, I'm dropping off to Los Altos, which is a huge order. I get this all this red. Okay. And then here's you guys dropping off at.
Yeah, I wrote it.
Yeah,
Oakland,
peaceful.
Union City, and Milpitas, and I already wrote.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of connections in Chinatown because one, my mom grew up here in the Pingyuan, and then my dad grew up in North Beach, so he was in Chinatown a lot as well. Growing up, we'd come to Chinatown all the time. We'd go to Cameron House, and my sister, she served on the board of directors at Cameron House. And now, as an adult, I live pretty much in Chinatown. So I'm here constantly shopping, I eat here. This is like my neighborhood and my community.
The restaurants that I've chosen have been all my favorite places that I go to in Chinatown. New Fortune on Stockton, Pork Chop House on Jackson, and Campo on Broadway and Powell. I'll start taking orders on Facebook. Initially, I just posted something and then I would let people reply on the wall. That didn't really scale very well because it required me to be super organized. So I created a Google form along with pictures of my favorite items that I think people will like. I will post it. People typically order from Wednesday or Thursday through Friday. And then I will update the restaurant on Friday with a total count that we have. I just left my place. My parents are helping create the tags for the deliveries this afternoon. When I collected all the money for the meals, it's all been through Venmo or Zelle or Apple Pay. Now I'm heading to the bank to pick up the money to pay for all the meals that we're going to be delivering. I think the part that stresses me out the most is hoping that the restaurant has all the food ready for us. Uh-oh. This used to be at Wells Fargo. No, we passed it. No, the one in Chinatown is closed. How much money can you withdraw from your ATM? All right, I've got 2 ATM cards, and then I can see if my mom and dad can do some and ask some friends to bring cash. Right now, we're at 1,700, but we need more. Probably more than your limit. Don't worry about it. We'll figure this out. Most friends would pay me with Venmo, but some of my parents' friends didn't have Venmo yet, so I would let them pay me with cash. I even think I've gotten a check before too. That was super clutch. Because I was like stressing, I was like, yeah, a lot of food, 330 orders.
The number 2 back. Number 1 with 4. 5 people free. Okay.
Came here with my son. We came here to help out Chinatown, and this is a community that we belong to of multiple generations. So we've been coming out here for the last 3 weeks to help lend a hand as a driver.
Not delivering door to door has made my life a lot easier. I did like seeing my friends though, because that would give me an excuse to chat with them for a couple minutes from a safe distance. Now with the pickup locations, it allows for a lot more deliveries and a lot faster, because I think people were asking that they don't get their food delivered at like 8 o'clock. I've gotten a ton of support from people, not only ordering food, but just saying that they're proud of me and I've inspired them. Hey, buddy. We did 330 orders today, so we're not professionals, but we're doing our best, and I think people typically are pretty understanding. Everyone's been super supportive, so they're not giving us bad ratings like they would if we were Uber Eats. All right, thank you. Initially, I was trying to, deliver food and support specific restaurants. Now, I think I was a lot more passionate about really driving this fundraiser.
The Feed and Fuel program was really important to me because this helped the families and the seniors that were living in the SROs. With this program, they didn't have to go out to the communal kitchens and they didn't have to go out to buy food. They had food delivered to them to keep them safer. I decided to change my fundraising strategy. I'm going to keep the price of the orders at $10, but I'm going to ask that each of you donate $5 on top of that. I asked them to share the fundraiser. It got me from 13,000 to 20,000 in 1 week. We hit 20,000. Check it out. I mean, I never really thought of myself as someone that's taking care of the community, but like now I see that there are things that I can do. So if I can tell the story of Chinatown and the special place in my heart, I think that's what helped drive a lot of the donations.
Coming to a restaurant like the Pork Chop House and ordering meals and delivering it to friends and neighbors is an incredible grassroots effort. It's that spirit that we need in Chinatown right now.
Is business starting to get a little bit better? Better than last week?
之前咧幫同人辦嗰啲餐館，即係送餐嗰啲人啊嘛，免費幫人哋送啊嘛，咁我知道係一個好好嘅人。
依家講話疫情咧對我生意咧影響係大嘅，起碼唔見50%嘅生意呀，所以咧你就幫襯我哋嘅餐館，我就呢件歡喜。
I think back and this could have been my family a couple generations ago. My mom and her 5 brothers and my grandma and grandpa, they lived in one of the low-income housing units in Chinatown. So, this easily could have been my family needing help. So if I can give back and, it's not just me giving, it's me organizing the fundraiser, but if I can share the message and get other people to donate, it makes me feel pretty happy. Thank you for making a difference together. We are Chinatown Strong, Shelter in Place 2020.
I love young people like him. Right now, the old generation, even my generation, is not suitable for today's need.
Yeah, it's all about community.
All about community, all about China.
Yeah. We just picked up 1,500 custom fortune cookies. So we're gonna give these away as gifts to all the people that have been ordering Chinese food from us these past couple weeks.
It's unique that someone so young would have concerns and desire to improve things in Chinatown.
We had made 15 deliveries last week, and then this week we have over 80 orders. So it's really amazing to see how this movement is starting.
He's out there seeing what he can do to make a difference.
Looking at what it is today, absolutely blew our mind to see 500 plus orders.
Like anything else, it takes a community to make it work.
It's been awesome. It's been a really great journey. I think people have learned that there's so many ways that they can give back to any community, whether Chinatown or people that are living on the other side of the world that have messaged me. I hope that this act and this project that I've been working on with friends can help pay it forward. Working together towards a common goal that we're all passionate about has been really enjoyable.
Wow, can we show some love to Kimberly, Aaron, and James for their powerful art, moving images and words? Please show them some love in the chats. That was a really powerful film, and we're going to get to hear from Aaron in a short moment. So I love how these love letters also document ways that our community continues its resiliency. And in our next session, we're gonna hear from Aaron Lim himself, along with artists Bijun Liang and Haichi Wu, as they talk about their projects as creative responders to the pandemic. Speaking of creative responders, I wanted to highlight Oakland artist and curator Ashara Ikundayo, who talks about how artists oftentimes are first responders when there is disaster or urgent need. To quote Ashara, "This creative work saves lives and often takes place in the form of ceremony. What I know is that artists respond at the edges of birth and death by rescuing, making, and stewarding creative pursuits on the front line edges of catastrophe and celebration." We think our speakers and artists today really truly demonstrate this, and we want to bring on our following three speakers to talk about how their ways of responding to catastrophe through creativity bring up like a very intentional thought process where they pull together resources to serve the community. So we'll have some time towards the end to open up the floor to Q&A. And if there's anything our speakers share that resonate with you, please comment or drop their quotes in the chat. All right, so with that being said, I want to introduce Aaron real quick. Aaron, hi.
Hi, Vida. Thanks for having me.
Hi. So we came across your story through Chinatown Shorts, and it was a very powerful one of a person who saw a need and an effort to rally people together in response to a cause. So can you start us off by telling us a little bit about yourself and some of your learnings from this mutual aid project?
Yeah, so I think a lot of us said it in the film, but I can kind of give you a background of like why I was inspired for this project and like where I came from. And I think a lot of it starts with my parents. Both of them are from San Francisco and Chinatown, and they really instilled values of giving back. And growing up, I volunteered here and there, but I can't say that I was always giving back to the community as much as I could. But when the pandemic started, I started talking to a lot of the restaurant owners, and these are people that I've gotten to know over the years because I've lived in Chinatown for like 8 years now. So I see these people weekly, and they keep me alive by feeding me. And they were telling me how bad business was going. So I would try and talk to my friends and get them to eat there as much as we could. And then as shelter in place started, we did the deliveries. But I think I really learned that we can all make a difference, and there's things that you can do. And it starts with something with just organizing your friends to eat in Chinatown, and then it catches fire, and it continues to grow. So I think that we can all make a difference in whatever community we're in. I'm in Chinatown, but other people have small businesses and communities in need. So I think that was one of the things that I learned. And the feeling that I got from this project was very different than the feeling I get from my normal day job working in tech. I'm passionate about my work, but with this project, it's like a different form of passion. I feel like I make an impact at work, but here I can actually like see the impact. And there's my parents. They're also on the call here. And yeah, thank you for all your help and for being great parents. But yeah, the passion that I had when I was working on this project is different. And I think when you start to work on something that you really care for, it's very rewarding. And these are just pictures of some of the pickups, and these are volunteers. The woman behind me, she owns the restaurant at New Fortune. And then the guy in the back is someone I went to middle school and high school with. The woman on the left is a coworker of mine. So it was, a band of friends and family from all aspects of my life, or from all different chapters of my life. So everyone was helping out.
Wow.
And of course,
I'm really curious, Erin, because you were able to rally together a lot of people for this cause. And I'm just wondering, like, what were some observations you noticed about the people who wanted to support or get involved with the effort? Like, what do you think drew them?
yeah, I think there were a couple different like groups that were helping, and the help could have been in forms of volunteering to deliver food or be a pickup location, or also donating to the fundraiser. And there was my parents' generation. So a lot of these people I've grown up knowing, or I know of them, and they would be ordering. So they grew up in Chinatown, or they have personal ties to the neighborhood. But then there was also a lot of other people that, grew up in San Jose, like friends of mine, or people that I've met, throughout my life and at work or in college. And, they saw that I was passionate about this project, and I think they wanted to help. And I think this is common with people, or young people. I'm not that young, but people my age or even younger, they want to do something and they want to help, but they don't really know how, or like what nonprofit that they should volunteer for. So using social media kind of allowed me to share this. And a lot of times social media gets a bad rap, but I think this is one way that we really used it to spread the message.
Wow. I remember when we first met, you also shared a little bit about the intersection of like being a community member and also someone who works in the tech industry and feeling that responsibility. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So it's an interesting take on like tech people, because I know in San Francisco and especially Chinatown, you hear people talk about gentrification of neighborhoods, and maybe tech workers just coming in, driving rent prices up, but not really becoming a part of the community. They'll move in, live there, and maybe the pandemic happens now and they're going to move out, so they just leave, but they never really became a part of the community. And that's something that I think that does happen, but I think there are also a lot of other people like me where, I live in Chinatown and this is my community. These are the people that, I see on a regular basis. This is where I eat the majority of the time. I shop here. My parents go to church a couple blocks away from me in Chinatown. So it's where I live. And I think there are a lot of examples of not only people who work in tech, but also the company that I work at, it's Twilio. And our CEO is very outspoken about this because, in the past couple months, you may have heard about different tech companies leaving the Bay Area for like Texas or other places. But, my CEO is saying, he wants to commit to the Bay. I think he started a hashtag commit to the Bay. And it's about keeping the company headquarters in San Francisco and giving back. So, he's donated personally a lot of money. And from a company perspective, we donate not only time, but also financially too, to the different nonprofits within the city. So I think, the tech community can give back. A lot of times we just need to share with them how they can do it.
Well, thank you so much, Erin, for sharing your story and also talking about what it means to be a responsible community member, right? Especially during this time. So thank you, Erin, for your labor and your dedication to keeping our Chinatown restaurants open. And can we show some love for Aaron for the work that he's done along with his community out in the chat?
And thanks to James and Anson too. So James produced it, and then in this picture right here, that's Anson who directed the film. So it was awesome working with Anson because I knew him kind of growing up because he's been friends with my sister. So felt super comfortable having him document the whole process. And I think the combination of James and Anson, they did an amazing job sharing the story. And this is one way that we can show the tech world or show anyone that there are ways that they can give back.
Yes, and you can find out more about Chinatown Shorts. You can follow them on Instagram, and Leanne has dropped it in the chat, and maybe she'll do it one more time. So you can find them. It's called Chinatown Shorts, and there are a lot more stories in there that James and other folks have collaborated on. So we really encourage you all to check them out. All right, thank you, Aaron. So next up, I want to pass the spotlight on to another artist named Bijun Liang. Hey, Bijun. Hi.
Hey, hi everyone, I'm Bijun.
Hi, so you created a beautiful mural outside of Washington Bakery entitled Chilltown Tanyan Phao. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself? Give us a background about yourself and tell us what you observed in Chinatown that inspired your work.
All right. Let me try and see if I will trip over my own words as I try to speak through this. And thanks, Vida, for introducing me. Hi, everyone. I am Bijun. I am actually, given what Aaron has said, I grew up in Chinatown. It was the first landing spot for me and my family when I came by when I was 5 to 6 years old. Grew up here all the way until high school, left for college, came back, continued to live here for the last 4 years. And well, recently I moved to the East Bay, but my folks still continue to work in Chinatown. One of the photographs that was shown earlier by Aaron was actually also my mom's salon. And I was like, whoa, like it's in there. And so Chinatown is very dear to my heart. And the interesting piece of it is that I'm actually someone from Chinatown that also works in the tech industry. So I feel that duality that Aaron was just talking about as well. My story for this mural in particular is actually a much smaller, almost a love letter relationship between my family and me, who's the second generation of a hair salon, with Chelsea, who's the second generation manager of her family's bakery, which is the Washington Cafe and Restaurant. What happened is that Chelsea was trying to help her family, like, COVID sucks, like there's no business, no one's walking around. And now that we have to deal with outdoor dining, and they created an outdoor parklet where people can eat and dine. And there's a big wall on the outside, a couple other walls on the left and inside of the sidewalk where now people can draw on it. Chelsea was really trying to figure out, hey, how can I make this space a better spot for people to both enjoy their time in Chinatown, but also bring business to my family, because let's be real, right? We gotta make money somehow. And she contacted some folks at the Chinese Culture Center, which ended up being also connected to me, who I've done with Vida and another artist previously around women in Chinatown. And I say, hey, like my family is struggling. I want to also do something for the community because I grew up here and, wanted to doodle on the sidewalk for the longest time in my life. And now I have an opportunity to do it. And what I wanted to do as the theme for my mural, if we go back one quick slide, is around this idea of people relaxing in Chinatown, and therefore the name of Tanyan which is a Chinese pun around 唐人街, 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 唐人街. And if we look at the character Tan in particular, it's what we use for, say, Tanboji, Tan Hamcha, Tan Saigai, to read the news, to have dim sum, to enjoy our afternoon tea. It's a character that means to enjoy. But the other meaning of tan is actually to sigh. It means the relief after this stage of struggle, and you finally get time to rest. That's also the other meaning of tan. And that's why I wanted to make this mural that, you know, if you just look at it, it's just these characters that are kind of cute, kind of fun. You know, they're drinking boba or laying on the sidewalk, you know, and they're getting a massage even. But in fact, if you look at it, they're literally like laying on the street in real life, kind of grimy, not that great. And this really reflects to the daily struggles and simple pleasures of the Chinatown neighborhood in general. And that was kind of the thinking behind this piece. The other fun part about this is if we go to the next slide, this is a picture that was taken of the mural as it was being created. And you get my right hand with a little paintbrush drawing, and you wonder who in the world is taking the picture if my hand is right there. And actually, this mural was done, in fact, over Thanksgiving break last year. And the situation of Washington Street in Chinatown, you don't realize it until you're standing there for hours in a day. It gets dark really fast in the winter at around 4:30 p.m. and you've got trucks and cars zooming by you every single day, and it's freezing. And so my family really wanted to just get this done together with me. And this mural actually was painted largely in part with the help of my dad, my mom, my aunt, even my childhood friend who I've known for over 15 years now. And we grew up in Chinatown together, and their hands and their paint brush marks are right on this mural alongside me. And they were painting. So it actually ended up being a family gathering at this mural through Thanksgiving. So that's a personal great memory for me. And one final piece at the end. This is a little more zoomed out view of what it looks like now. So if you ever pass by the Washington Bakery and Restaurant, and you pass by here, what I only hope is that, you know, you get a little bit of that fun and relaxing vibe of the neighborhood, but you can also understand a little bit about the history and the struggles that people are here. And that's my piece.
Thank you so much, Bijan. I feel like your art really brings in lightness and like playfulness, like during this time when we need it the most. And it's so important for a community spirit. And so can we show some love to lightness and joy in the chat box here for Bijan and her family's artwork, family and friends artwork. Thank you for, you know, just kind of bringing this message to our community.
Thank you.
Yes. So if you get a chance, please go visit Washington Bakery and then check out Bijan's mural. So in our next part, I want to pass the mic over to Hai-Chi Vu, who will be speaking about a unique and creative mutual aid project he's a part of. Hi, Hai-Chi.
Hi, Vida and friends.
Hi. So I'm just, yeah, I feel so lucky to, you know, have you on to talk about this next part. So you're part of a mutual aid project through your work, the Chinese Progressive Association, and it's called the CPA COVID-19 Emergency Stabilization Fund, along with other mutual aid, you know, projects. Like this really practiced and really thought hard about equity in a time when resources have like slimmed down so drastically, and equity has become even more complicated to talk about or even think through because of scarcity, right?
Right.
So I'll pass it on to you, Hai-Chi, if you could speak a little bit more about yourself and also your role with CPA, and yeah, I'll pass it on to you.
Thanks, Vida. Hi, everyone. My name is Hai-Chi, he, him pronouns. I'm the development manager at Chinese Progressive Association. CPA is a community nonprofit organization founded in Chinatown. We have almost 50 years history in the community. We organize, educate, and empower immigrant workers, Chinese immigrant workers in Chinatown, but also across the city, to really talk about, the importance to keep fighting for better living and working conditions for workers, for young people, for elders. So when we launched the Mutual Aid Fund, or the Mutual Aid work in general, we have a very particular framework and values that we really want to hold. And that's primarily to really recognize that mutual aid is not only charity, it's also a political act, an opportunity to engage our community in talking about the systemic issues, right? The problems people are experiencing are not their faults, right? It is the fault of the system that is, inherently have problems even way before COVID. So we really want to hold this value when we're approaching our work, to engage people and not only to receive funds. It's not a passive way of just receiving services and getting support. You want to engage people to think about the possibilities to demand for more, to correct what has been wronged, right, in our system, and to use this opportunity to, to support and address the greatest needs in our community, and also taking this opportunity to raise the issues that we're seeing and how do we move forward and recover from COVID. So with that said, we had multiple approach to mutual aid. One was really the beginning of, shelter in place, like weeks leading up to the March kind of closing. We had a surge in demand for unemployment insurance assistance, not only from our members, but from a lot of folks who were finding out about CPA for the first time. And that kind of show, the major challenges that folks are having is not only just language access. EDD, is still entangled in a whole lot of issues even today. But at the time, folks did not have access to the language support, the digital support, and overall, there's just a lot of folks being left out of the system, right? We know that undocumented folks did not get access to UI and even the pandemic stimulus checks. We know that young adults did not have access to any supports. We know that a lot of our seniors who were not filing taxes did not get their support. So the thought around the mutual aid fund kind of came from that point, where we know that majority of Americans don't even have $500 in emergency savings. So when folks are asking us, we don't know what to do, right? We don't have income, UI, we're still waiting, we didn't get any checks, but we need to pay rent. We have necessities that we need to pay for. So then we thought about launching the mutual aid fund in conjunction to all the other things that we're doing in terms of food distribution, PPE distribution, creating spaces for emotional and Skillshare support. And then initially we thought, doing the mutual aid fund, we're going to have maybe a couple hundred, applications from our members. Initially it was, just address the needs of our members and what they're voicing to us. But to our surprise, within a week and a half, we received over 4,500 applications from folks across the Bay Area, folks who never heard about CPA before until this opportunity. And we had folks applying from as far as Sacramento. Right. And of course, with that much demand, we were not able to provide all that, all the funds. It will require us to fundraise over $2 million to address all the needs. So from that portion, we were able to review only 332 applications, and go through our own due diligence to review and do follow-up calls and conversations with folks. And from that point on, we kind of we made the decisions for distribution. I'll talk a bit more about the administrative side of it later, but this is just some stats of what we heard, right? From our applicants, 90% really have voiced that they need the funds to pay for rent. Rent is the highest need among other things that we ask folks about, right? Folks could share that, groceries, medical expenses, educational expenses, but rent continue to be the highest need. And then of all applicants, the majority at the time, around April, early May, did not receive any type of government support or UI especially. And then almost 90% of folks did not have lost their jobs. They're the main wage earner in the family have lost their job. And then we see a significant number of applicants being older adults, working adults, and our seniors needing additional support. Yeah, so then when we launched the fund, I'll go through this part first. One of the major limitations is, of course, our tax status being a nonprofit. The IRS, the government, make it actually harder to help people to distribute funds. There are a lot of administrative aspects that we need to make sure we're in compliance of in order to even give away money, right? So part of that, we had to create the infrastructure to review applications, to score applications, to assess the need, even if the need is very apparent, we need to document and assess that need before we can distribute money. And during that process, we learned that the best way to do it is centering our grassroots leaders, right? Within our decision-making body to review the applications, to make the funding decisions, we make sure to have our members, so adult members or worker adult member from our tenant worker center. We had our youth leader from our Youth Mojo program. We have our activist leader in part of the decision and deliberation to hear their voice, because from them, they are the folks who are mainly impacted, right? They're from the community, they know what the needs are, and to provide this opportunity for them to raise awareness, to understand that the political issues involving mutual aid is more complex than just sending out money and providing services. During the process, we learned a lot. We share a lot of our learnings with eventually we share our learnings in our administration of the Undocu Fund project, which is another mutual aid fund for undocumented workers and families. We help with the distribution and the deliberation of that. We continue today to use mutual aid and integrate it into our work as a base and power building tool. Because we know that $500 one-time payment, almost as good as what the federal government can do. It's not going to help people in the long run. We know that there needs to be more and structural issues that need to be. So we want to use mutual aid as a continual vehicle to build our base and demand for more. Sorry. And then overall, we distributed $45,000. With the support of our donors, we were able to launch the fund at the same time as we launched the application process, which was not easy. So we were trying to raise money as we're giving them away. So to date, as of our last distribution was in December, we were able to distribute $45,000 to 90 households. We were dividing that to ensure that we meet the needs of our community. Our membership base is, our workers, tenants. We have youth members. We have adult senior members. So we want to make sure that our distribution is equal in ways that's address the needs across our different membership bases. So the fund was designated across for these percentages. So 30% of workers, 20% of tenants, 25% of seniors, and 25% of youth. And we do want to prioritize recipients in the city because we are an organization in San Francisco. And then 10% of the funds go to applicants outside of the city. And of course, I do recognize that folks can hold multiple identities, and that we do our best to, document that process because of compliance issue. And every time, I, send things over to our legal counsel, I'm always very worried. I have to make sure to fix everything to make sure that it's in compliance, but also want to have the sense of urgency to give out the funds as soon as possible because the needs are so dire. Yeah. Anything I'm missing, Vida?
Thank you, Haichi. I feel like you really gave like a really comprehensive, just kind of like overview around the process, and something that just when I first heard about the project, I thought it was really cool that you all had community members be on this decision-making process, right? You all had youth, like transitional age youth, tenant and workers decide together like how we should allocate like these funds when there's so many people in need. Could you talk a little bit more about like, like individual stories that like really stuck out to you?
Right. So as we're reviewing the applications, we made 200 calls to, applicants who's in the second round to do more detail, understanding of their situation. One of the applicant that I called was Mr. Lee. He was a worker who lost his job, and he was involved in a campaign that CPA was doing with Kome Buffet, which we were able to bring back money to workers. He is an elderly person, a senior, and he has a teenage child. And I think from that conversation, it's really heartbroken because, he was not able to do work. Even if he was able to do work, he was not able, he was working and being exploited as a worker and living in SRO. His rent was in the thousands, right? And I just cannot imagine having to pay, like, was it $1,700 for an SRO and living with his child. It was just really hard to really even perceive the need that he's, the urgency and the needs that he's facing. And then, what can I do? What can we do as a community to support him? And I know there are multiple applicants, individuals within our community facing very similar situation, right? And it just makes me really heartbroken to see that, having to decide and having to, choose who has the greatest need, right? When the system is just not even great to support to begin with, right? To even making sure that everyone have the basic living income, and making sure that folks' rent isn't extremely high for no reason, right? Yeah, it's a time for us to rethink and to be creative about what's possible moving forward, and not accept the conditions that they are right now.
I really like what you said about not accepting the conditions that we're living in right now, because like, I think what's very unique about this project is that like, here is an opportunity to make sure that people get to decide what they need. And also, San Francisco overall, we have a long ways to go when it comes to like housing and like rent stabilization, right? Like a lot of our folks have been left homeless, or even like just scrambling because of the pandemic. I know you also shared about another story of a mother, Yo-Yo. Could you talk a little bit about her too?
Yeah, Yo-Yo is one of our SRO organizer. She lives in a Chinatown SRO, and she has been, along with our other SROs, our SRO organizers, have been at the front line doing a lot of the distribution, right? PPE distribution and food distribution in Chinatown in collaboration with CCDC. And I think in this moment, we do recognize that like folks are not only in need, but also are trying to care for their communities, for their neighbors, right? Leaders like Yo-Yo are reaching out to their community. As we know, like recently, throughout the pandemic so far, we have seen outbreaks in SROs. Like we even, some of our families and leaders are seeing that their neighbors and their own families being affected by that. So what can we do to making sure that, SROs are our families were supported, and that, you know, the city is upholding the requirements and their responsibility to ensure that escrow families are living in healthy conditions and have the support that they need to weather through the pandemic.
Yeah, and like when it comes to, you know, dignified housing, like in our single room occupancies, it's really hard for people to like socially distant during this time, or even like make sure that their children and like their elders are safe, right? Because the conditions that we're living in doesn't allow us like to practice like healthy, like public
Right.
health. Yeah. So thank you for sharing that, Haichi. I think you also did you also want to share a little bit more about any other kind of efforts that CPA is you know, leading in the next few months?
Right. Well, I think, well, first of all, we are continuing to fundraise to create this pool of funds available to the community as needed, right, over the next, you know, as when the pandemic, the pandemic will sure continue for many years and continue to impact folks. So if folks are, you know, supporting, you know, able to support the expansion of the fund so we could grow and continue to disperse funds to families in need, I think we will continue to provide PPE, right, to the community. And secondly, there's going to be another level of fighting, which is at the policy and systemic level, where we need to continue to not look at services, but continue to escalate the conditions and making sure policymakers, you know, with the opportunity we now have with the new administration, a lot of things are possible. And we want to look at this not only as a crisis, but as an opportunity for more organizing. So there's going to be new demands to making sure there's more, as businesses reopen in Chinatown especially, we know that workers need to be in safe working conditions, right? We don't want to see businesses reopen, but then employers are exploiting workers and not paying, you know, the minimum wage, the sick leave and things like that. So workers are not sacrificing their lives to go to work for the sake of like financial security. So there needs to be stronger enforcement on that end. And of course, CPA will be hopefully will be leading that effort. I know some of my colleagues are on the call. Feel free to pitch in. Yeah, and I think want to make sure that, you know, there's going to be standard, you know, support for families in the city as well. So yeah, those are some of the things that we are having in mind in terms of what's next in this, in making sure our community have a voice in the city and the state's overall recovery plan. Yeah.
Thank you, Haichi, for giving us an opportunity to take action. Leanne has dropped in the link in our chat box. Can we show some love for equity and trusting in people to know what they need? Show some love out in the comment section. Now I want to open up this next part for a dialogue amongst all of our speakers to respond to the two questions. What do you think is at stake for Chinatown in this moment? And how do we get people who were once connected or part of the community to be involved in supporting Chinatown through this period? We also encourage, you know, like folks in the audience to also think a little bit about, think a little deeper on these two questions as well. And so I'll just open up to any speakers or the artists as well, like who would like to respond to that question.
Yeah, you were mentioning something about the what's at stake at in Chinatown at this moment.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a very. I'll start. I feel like it's a challenging time. We're in crisis mode right now. I'm currently producing a 2-hour PBS documentary about the 1900 bubonic plague in San Francisco Chinatown. And the common threads between right now, COVID time, in comparison to 1900 San Francisco, there's a lot of similarities. There's the anti-Chinese sentiment that came up. There's the blame, deep-rooted systemic racism that affects public policy and public health. And so I think where we are at right now is that the micro lens perspective, I really do see that our neighborhood is suffering right now. But so are other neighborhoods in San Francisco, right? But the specificity that is Chinatown suffering is very cultural. Like for instance, we're losing all of our large like banquet hall styles. Like banquet halls are like where we gather with family, with like community, with galas for the organizations, right? Family meals. So we're losing like a huge part of that. But when it comes to like the macro lens perspective, we know that epidemics and pandemics, they come and then they get eradicated. Not fully eradicated, bubonic plague is still out there. But through science and facts and modern medicine and community engagement, I feel like that's when we rise through the crisis. So yeah, so to answer your question, like where we are at right now is that we're in the survival instinct mode. And if you look at history, like Chinatown has always like made it through all these terrible times, right? Terrible crises through unity, through the community coming together, all the organizations coming together. So I feel like, for instance, like individuals like Aaron Lim showing up, right? Like the Aaron Lims in our communities, those are like, that's deeply inspiring to me. The collective organizations of like CCDC and CPA through like activating, like mobilizing community kitchens during this time is incredible to see. Seeing them pivot from their goals of like their attention and housing to food, to safety of like SRO communities. And then you have like mutual aid from like CPA, and then you have like Chinese Culture Center with Chinese affirmative action working together in Asian Black solidarity and through art. So I feel like there's, at this moment, we meet the crisis with community, with each other. People power.
Yes, thank you for those words, James. I think like, you know, making that connection to history and how like for Chinese folks and for Asians, for instance, like we still are not off the hook when it comes to like race and racism in America. You know, our acceptance is like conditional, you know, and so yeah, thank you for those words. Anyone else want to respond to these questions?
I can hop on. Something that also popped out at me around what James mentioned is that, you know, these pandemics or illnesses, they come and pass, and, you know, Chinatown will live through it. I do think that something that is at stake is the perception of Chinatown and its community because of the pandemic that will live beyond the pandemic itself. And that is something that I'd say the community themselves are not necessarily thinking or talking too much about, because everyone is in this survival instinct mode. They're just trying to make ends meet. And there's just no time or mental energy for anyone to really think about how does Chinatown and the perception of us, and how do we join this conversation at a larger scale with the rest of the world and how they perceive or might think about us. I think that's definitely, yeah, a question and a problem that I'm not quite sure we have a solution to quite yet.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about this as well. I think one way of engaging the community and bridging gaps within the community, one way is through art. I really appreciate Bijin's mural, kind of like livening up the community, showing that like we're still here through our art. And I think Aaron's project brings up a good way, showing how social media can really bridge gaps between maybe monolingual communities and the younger generations, and just people within the community, like showing how like people who have moved away can still have a connection to Chinatown, whether that be just giving a friend who's lived in Chinatown before, hey, you want to order a meal with me from Chinatown, or just kind of checking in on them. And I think one theme of the pandemic is like we really got to stay connected. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you all. Anyone else
Sure.
would like to respond? Yes.
Yeah, because when James had mentioned, as the start of the pandemic, we were starting to see a lot more like anti-Asian sentiment. That was something that, I really resonated with me. And every time we see something on news or like Next Shark of, and things happen like in the city too. It's not in the middle of America. So it was, really saddening to hear. And I don't know that I didn't have the solution. I don't have the solution, but I think that's part of the things that's at stake. And I don't feel like Chinatown is as safe as it used to be even like 5 years ago. Like when I walk around, I think about things that have happened, and there was a number of events. So I think, I don't know if it's just like a better police presence, or maybe like CCDC just working with the community members more, but that's something that concerns me. And especially when we see the elders being targeted too.
Yeah, that part around like anti-Asian violence is definitely real. And a lot of times our elders have been, the main targets, right? And I know that there have been a lot of community efforts, coming together to make sure that our community feels safe. I also want to just go around one more time if any folks feel inclined to respond to this question. All right. So thank you all for sharing. And, like the reason why we asked this question is because, when we're talking about what's at stake for Chinatown, like even after this pandemic, like the question that's hanging above all of us is like, how will Chinatown look like? Will there still be a Chinatown after this, right? Will our folks who live in Chinatown still be able to call it their home? And the second question in terms of like, how can we get people who were once connected or lived or worked in the community to support Chinatown through this period, is because we want to make sure that the folks who, like are thinking and kind of caring and taking initiatives around the community to make sure that we feel safe and that our needs are met, is also led by folks who understand like the people and understand the community, right? Especially from, like a youth perspective, or from like an elder perspective, or from a tenant and worker perspective, right? Because those are the folks who, who oftentimes are marginalized, like even in our own communities. So how do we really center that as a whole? So in this next part, I want to open up the floor to the audience. If any folks have questions that you feel moved to raise to our speakers, you can drop it in the chat right now. So we'll give you all a moment if you want to raise any questions to our speakers. Now is the time.
Can I add one thing to the earlier question?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that there's a lot of people that have good intentions and that like want to help. And I can, think of my group of friends too. Like, I think they're all like genuinely good people, but sometimes you need that one person in the group to organize or to like kind of give everyone the nudge. It's not just, caring about the community, but it's about like doing something. And, I think I've been guilty of this too in the past. I care about Chinatown, but what am I really doing? So it does start with like each person kind of uniting their group of friends and getting them out and like, on this Saturday, instead of us going on a hike, let's volunteer. And, it spreads. It's kind of like grassroots, but, you have each person getting to their network and then getting to their network and sharing opportunities, how people can give back. So like, you can't count on people looking up, how can I help Chinatown? We have to like be out there, like spreading it on social media.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, what you noted, Erin, because I think a lot of times there's this like desire, especially in the beginning of the pandemic, like there was this like tenderness, right, to how people were just like, oh, how can I help? How can I support my community? But not really knowing how. And it really is like led by efforts of our own community members and ourselves, right, to give those opportunities, and open up those opportunities to people. Any questions? Feel free.
I also wanted to give a brief like shout out to Carmen as well. I know like when the pandemic started and a lot like things were just really tough. Kind of connecting that like Carmen and I both like live in Chinatown, and she's part of my community, I'm part of her community, and like checking in with each other and showing each other love, like that definitely is one way. Like that form of community love shows up, and continuing to be here for each other, and like having those personal connections.
I like to also think that the 70 to 80 people who have dropped by in this meeting today have this huge, itch to be helping Chinatown. And that's why we're here. And that's why we want to connect. And even if we are able to, communicate and connect with each other beyond this event in itself, like, oh, that's like that random girl that showed up one time. But in fact, it actually becomes the spark for something that helps the community in the future. That would be a great thing.
Yeah, thank you both, Kimberly and Bijun, for highlighting that like personal, one-on-one like relationship building. Like oftentimes that's like the most foundational part when it comes to like supporting our community, right? We see one question out here in the chat. How can we support Chinatown while supporting and acknowledging the people, organizations, and community members who've been doing the work? Would anyone like to respond? I'm guessing this is kind of saying that, how can we like help while also noting that there are many efforts that are already existing here in Chinatown? Like how can people get plugged in?
When we did the Chinatown food deliveries, the proceeds of the fundraiser went to CCDC's Feed and Feel program, and I think that lasted for 2 months, and they helped a lot of businesses and served a lot of meals, and that ended. But recently, as like the pandemic has gotten a little bit worse, they've brought it back, so they're calling it the Feed and Feel 2.0, and their goal is to, I think they're trying to raise it was a lot. So we have a lot of work to do, and that's one way that people can donate, not only financially, but they can donate time, can help drop off the meals, and yeah, I think that's one way.
Thank you for that, Erin. And we're going to show you all like opportunities to get plugged in and to, like support, whether it's like through donations or, like future efforts around like deliveries or like, art. We are going to share all of that towards the end. So I want to open up this next section for a activity that we're all going to participate in. So I'll pass it on to Carmen to take it away.
Thank you, Vida. Sorry, there's so many tabs going on. So for this next portion of the activity, Vida and I really wanted to be intentional with us, with everyone here. So we wanted, and thinking about like sitting with the conversations that we've had and thinking about like what we are doing, right? The project itself is like love letters to Chinatown. So we really, really want to invite like everyone here today to write love notes to Chinatown, to create love letter, to create a collective love letter together. Leanne just dropped the link to the Padlet, the platform we'll be using to facilitate this activity in the chat. So after you open the link, you will see the prompt at the very top right next to the heart. And it's the same prompt that we have on the website, which reads, create a love letter to a person, business, space, or organization you hold dear to Chinatown. Consider Chinatown a living being. What would you say to Chinatown during this time? What do you want her to know? And which stories do you want to share? So go ahead and head on over to that platform. You may double click anywhere on the page and write your note, or click on the bottom right hand plus sign. If you click on the three dots in the note you're about to write, you can see that there are options to draw or record audio or upload photos or videos. It's quite a multimedia activity. And then afterwards, we'll share these notes on the website. So we'll give a couple minutes for folks to head on over and to share whatever they would like to share. I love all the notes showing up. Cute. I'm noticing a lot of love, a lot of mention about comfort and nourishment. Folks a minute or two, and then we'll come back and share the Thank you. Thank you, Vida, for that beautiful music. Wow, look at all these beautiful love notes. Would anyone like to shout what they wrote? I'm noticing a lot of folks are mentioning about, I'm just gonna read a couple on here or what I see. I miss the alleyways, learning about new shops and community spots every time I walk around. I also notice a lot of sweetheart cafes. That's definitely a place for folks to gather. I also see, dear Chinatown, thank you for nourishing a whole entire community. To all the artists, cultural workers, organizers who have ties to Chinatown, so appreciative to learn and grow my relationship with a place that has deep roots in a lot of people's heart. To the lady at the ring shop on my birthday, thank you for making, ooh, where'd that go? Sorry, that just like, sorry, I missed that note. I'm so sorry. The next one is, I love being able to walk into Chinatown and hear the different dialects. So the Padlet will be up for y'all to continue writing whenever y'all feel like it. It'll still be there. We will be posting this on our website, which is ChinatownLoveLetters.com. Thank you to all the amazing speakers who have shared. Please go ahead and check out their work. We will be including the links and the information at the end of this. We will also be sharing a link to everyone who RSVP'd so we can stay connected with each other and basically stay in touch with the call to actions that were mentioned earlier today. If you want to follow Love Letters to Chinatown, we do have a website, like I mentioned. It's www.ChinatownLoveLetters.com. One last note, this event has been recorded with an AI captioning. We want to make this event as accessible to monolingual folks in our Chinatown community as possible. So we will be translating the English captioning to Chinese. If you are interested or know of anyone interested, to translate, please reach out to us at ChinatownLetters@gmail.com. And lastly, if you would like to support this project and in the spirit of asking for help, Vida and I are asking for donations to help fund our translators and resources like ink for publication and to keep our website running. Because y'all, I didn't know you had to pay for a website until we created a website, okay? So funds would be greatly appreciated. Leanne will be dropping a Venmo account in the chat. That's Carmen J. Chen. If you can please just write Love Letters to Chinatown as the memo, it will really help us on organizing on our end. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Carmen. And really this project started with are run by like volunteers like myself and Carmen and a few folks who are volunteering their time to translate. So we really appreciate your support. I also want to take this time to really thank APIC again for partnering up with us as hosts for this event. And of course to Leanne Chen, who's been dropping those links and like moderating the chat. Like she's just really been a rock for us throughout this whole event. And thank you, Diana, too, who's been helping out with tech. And of course, we want to thank our Rockstar community members who came out to speak today. You can learn more about their art and community projects here in the slide that we're showing. To kind of round this off, I really want to invite everyone to just kind of show some love to our speakers through the audio. So I want to thank you all for coming and also invite you all to, on the count of 3, turn on your mics to show them some love or applause, and just really, show everyone here some love. So thank you all for coming, and on a count of 3, turn on your mics and give everyone a shout of applause. 1, 2, and 3.
Yay!
Thank you.
Good job.
Amazing.
Very good.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for a wonderful afternoon.
Love you, Chinatown.
Whole gallery.
Great job, Erin. Thanks, Carmen.
Thank you. Hi, Kelly.
Hi.